Previously on the psychology of entrepreneurship.
I can't possibly charge that much. Why not? Other people charge that much. Why can't you charge that much? When I'm presented with an opportunity, the filter through which I pass it through is, does this align with that bigger picture vision? If I say yes to this, is it bringing me closer to that bigger picture vision? I was so burnt out all the time because I was constantly focused on external metrics, and I was constantly placing my worth, my value, my success on things that were outside of my control.
It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. I'm Australian, and I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians of country where I live and work. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge our continuous connection and contribution to land, sea, and community. Happy 2022. I cannot believe that it is 2022 already. That's just crazy. Anyway, my wife Rochelle and I decided that our word for the year is love. So as you are listening to this volume, I'd like you to think of your word for 2022. My guest today for this volume is Matt Bertulli. Matt is the co-founder and CEO of Case, which is a company dedicated to creating a waste-free future, specifically plastic waste. They produce phone cases, AirPod cases, smartwatch bands, and other tech accessories that are all 100% compostable. These kinds of entrepreneurs are my favorite to talk to because I just love business owners that start their brand with a bigger picture in mind. And not the bigger picture for themselves or their future necessarily, but the bigger picture for the planet and the health of this environment. And this conversation started out the way a lot of entrepreneurial-centric ones do, about failure.
Totally. It became cool to be a loser. It was super cool to fail. And I mean, like, it is a good thing too, but I think it swung a little too far in that now you got a lot of people out there spouting off. There's all kinds of content and shit around failure. And I think it's just another form of hustle porn. Like, I love the culture it creates, like, so my family is mostly Italian and they're self-employed and they've built big business in Italy. And there are countries in Europe where failure is not celebrated in the way that it is in North America, right? In Canada and the US, like, if you're an entrepreneur, failure is celebrated, like, good for you. But in Europe, it's a shame thing. And like in Japan, it's a shame thing. And like, there's certain cultures where it's not at all true. And I kind of miss some of that too. Like, I like that they don't want to fail. And at the same time, I appreciate the Western side, which is like, they're willing to try insane shit because they're okay with failure. So somewhere in the middle is where you probably want to be. I just really don't like the setting out to like, I'm going to learn a lot because I know I'm going to fail a lot. I'm like,
I love that. Entrepreneurs have a failure muscle, and over time we can flex it a bit more and still overcome failure. I definitely feel like that's true for me and my journey. I'm not sure that the fear of failure ever goes away if the perspective we have is one of personal glory. If we want to look good, it's hard to ever fail. So if you don't know about my $478,000 of debt after my first business, here is a short summary. I had a business which was my passion, which is cooking. I had a restaurant. My first business was a restaurant. 3.5-4 years after operating it, one day the doors were shut and I had $478,000 of debt. That's a long story short that I really learned to become the entrepreneur from that point because I was 3 months married to my beautiful wife, Rochelle, and I had to pay all this debt back. And here's the, I suppose, best part of the story is that that debt got paid back in 2 years and 1 month. But what I learned in those 2 years and 1 month, I could not pay another $500,000 to learn from a university. But more about this failure muscle from Matt.
Yeah, I mean, capacity is definitely the way to think of it, right? So like, do you want it? Do you have capacity for it? Like, that's definitely a big part of being an entrepreneur. And I think over time, it's a muscle. Like I was talking to my personal trainer about this yesterday when I was there, and he's asking me like, where do I feel stress? And my comment back to him was like, I don't know. Like I'm so like, I've got such a high tolerance for it now that like my naturopath does not, like, I have to take a supplement to feel stress. Like it's just because, there are periods of time when you are in like the business building mode where like you are so high stress that you forget it. And I think you just create muscle and you get comfortable with it. I'm with you though. I don't think that makes you a risk taker. I actually think I'm in the camp that most great entrepreneurs are risk adverse. Like they're super risk calculated. And there's enough great stories out there that would probably back that up, from the Richard Bransons of the world all the way down. The best story I can give on this would be like the company I'm building now, right? Pila. I'm trying to create a waste-free future. So like when people ask me what I do, I'm like, well, we're the Tesla, but for waste. And people are like, well, that sounds really big. I'm trying to make something really, really big and really, really impactful. And inevitably you get to this whole point, like that sounds really risky. The honest truth is like, yes, it definitely is. But here's the thing that you're not going to hear very often. I'm only doing that. Like if I'm being brutally honest here, I am only taking what seems like a big risk because I have a massive safety net, and that I've already sold one company. My partner has already sold one company. If this thing fails, I don't lose my house. I don't starve my family. Like none of that changes. And that's not talked about enough. Like when you look at these big name entrepreneurs and the crazy shit that they seem to do, they seem to take on the world, right? And the reality is that if they fail, they don't care. Their ego cares, but it doesn't mean they're on the street.
That's quite a point. Perhaps your failure muscle is strong because you know you'll be okay if you fall. If you don't have the kind of safety net Matt has, it's much scarier, right? I don't know. I think some entrepreneurs make insane risks while having almost nothing to fall back on. The go big or go home mentality, I suppose. Or thinking you have nothing left to lose, so why not go for it, Matt?
Definitely, man. This is the thing. Like I believe that if you were born in, like I was born in Canada, I was raised in Canada, I have very little excuse. Like there's a lot of safety nets here, even from a government perspective. Like we have safety nets, and a lot of countries don't have that. I don't think that, and I think that it's still tough to run out and take like large amounts of risk. Particularly, I find there's some correlation between how old you get and how established you get in your life and how much risk you're willing to take. For sure. Like, a 45-year-old lawyer is probably not going to leave that job to go start a company that's going to try to like launch a rocket to Mars. Probably not. The psychology of it doesn't mean that that person can't do it. It just means they probably won't. And I think that risk and stress and capacity, like when I think about it, it's usually I can create it, but I can only create so much of it based on how much tolerance for stress I have in my life or my relationship, right? So like that muscle is limited by not just like my own personal variables. Like I think about people around me, and like I've got a kid, and there's only so much risk I'm willing to take.
Starting small is a philosophy that is eventually becoming a serious driving force for most startups to succeed today. For example, Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook from the Harvard dormitory. Yet, one would assume that Facebook started big based on its current muscle in the social media industry. 17 years down the road, Facebook has about 2.8 billion users and a market value worth over $500 billion. Successful companies like Apple, Amazon, and Starbucks all have a humble story of their beginning.
At this point, Matt started talking about how entrepreneurs tend to idolize.
Honest to God, man, like I don't really even go in the rooms where I see like an Elon Musk. Like honestly, and like the average entrepreneur, like unless you are setting out to solve a massive global problem that is going to be at that scale, what do you think you're going to learn from him? Like, what is Elon Musk going to teach you that's relevant in your life? If you're a billionaire and you are trying to launch rockets, dude, it's a great guy to talk to. I mean, I'm trying to solve a massive problem and I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I would rather talk to somebody who is like, maybe 2 steps ahead of where I am now, not 2 million steps ahead of where I want to be, like to the place that I want to get to. We idolize a lot of entrepreneurs. Well, not idolize, but like they get a ton of airtime because they're great PR people. But in terms of like lessons to learn from them, I'm missing it. I don't get it.
Okay, so Pillowcase has a mission. Matt had a mission creating Pillowcase as a company. Tell us about that mission, Matt.
Have I found a mission that fits the market? And then can I build products, like create products and design waste out of the product from the start? And then make it so that people just see them as simple swaps. That's how I look at things. You cannot do that by only saying, but I'm only doing this for aspirational reasons. Then it's not true. Then you actually aren't about the mission. If you like, when I see a brand say they're here to be the most sustainable X of Y, and your shit is 5 times more than the B of Y, you're a liar. Like flat out, man. Like you're not telling the truth. If you have a true mission, so like if you're using sustainability in our case as a marketing hook and like it's a positioning statement, as opposed to, for me, it is actually the mission. Like I want to create a future without waste. That's my mission. Well, in that case, if I'm being honest with myself, I sell some products that are wholly outside of the reach of most people. And what am I doing about that then? I don't have answers, but like that's, as an example of listening, this is what I've currently come to. From an ego perspective, I think they call that legacy. That's what I hear is what it's called. So there's some part of me, sometimes it's a bigger part, sometimes it's a smaller part, that likes the legacy, leaving a legacy of like, I was here and this is what I dedicated a good portion of my life to. Obviously not all of it. So that helps, right? In that I'm pretty confident I'm never going to solve the problem of waste entirely. I'm actually really only focused on certain segments of it too. But can I further the mission is how I look at it. We set the mission big and kind of like a little abstract that people can interpret it in their own way. But there's the other part of me, to flip it back, which doesn't like the idea that I'm never going to hit the goal. I mean, that kind of keeps you up at night a little bit, which is, I'm pretty confident I'll get to 1 billion pounds a year of waste. I have we've got a roadmap and I believe strongly in it. I think it'll work. But 1 billion pounds a year of waste is nothing. Like in the grand scale, there's like, I don't know how many 16 billion tons of plastic enter the ocean every year. Like it's insane. It makes people's head hurt. It's like, so all these people around the world are putting stuff in these bins thinking they're doing a good thing, when in the reality of that waste stream is 90% of that isn't getting recycled. Actually, a good chunk of it can't be recycled because it's mixed. So like when you see plastic, like packaging that's got plastic and paper, it's not like they're ripping that shit apart somewhere to recycle them separately. They just torch it. Literally, they incinerate it. So I think what it is, the problem is big and gnarly and it kind of gets people down, which at the same time is good. Everybody takes it out every week. It's something you understand, right? You understand food waste. You get it. It stinks. It smells. You throw it in your garbage. You hate it while it's in your house. Like any kind of a peanut butter jar that's still got peanut butter on the inside. Somehow peanut butter goes from being the best thing you've ever had to that jar is gross. I don't want to touch it because it's now like the remnants of the peanut butter. Well, if you didn't take the remnants of the peanut butter out, that jar is also not recycling. Like it's not being recycled. So it's just such a big topic.
When we come back, creating a waste-free future.
Our aim with this audio documentary has always been to build a strong community of entrepreneurs and creatives to provide a space where they can use their voice to share their authenticity with the world. As a valued listener, your voice matters too. We love to hear your feedback and ideas, so don't be shy to let us know how we're doing in the ratings and comments. If you have a message for our production team or know someone who would be a perfect fit as a guest, you can find out more information on how to share your input at psychologyofentrepreneurship.com.
All right. Before Matt tells us more about his amazing mission to create a waste-free future, let's get a little perspective on this plastic problem. The next piece is from CNBC on the role plastics play in waste.
It's true. Since the 1950s, humans have produced about 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic. Every year, 8 million metric tons end up in the ocean. Globally, only 9% of plastics are recycled. And with the coronavirus crisis, we're relying on single-use plastics now more than ever, from masks and gloves to takeout containers. But it's not just a waste problem. Plastics and fossil fuels are inextricably linked.
Both the production and the disposal of plastic is a major climate change issue. Plastic's mostly made from chemicals and ethane, which is a byproduct of hydrofracking.
And as the world tries to move away from fossil fuels, oil and gas companies are increasingly relying on plastics to make money.
The rise of electric vehicles will mean that the oil demand from the transportation sector will diminish as we go through the next 15, 20 years.
And so when those companies look for their growth drivers, they're looking at petrochemicals. And petrochemicals mostly means plastic.
All right, Matt, give us more perspective.
No, it's massive. There's a documentary that actually just came out called Kiss the Ground. And it talks about compost. And actually talks about soil and the importance of soil, particularly in the fight against carbon and climate change, which is very real and very much a problem. The word crisis, I can debate about the misuse of that, but food waste in America, like North America, I'm Canadian, I'm going to lump Canada in with the US. I mean, we throw away like half of all of our food, like half, just like we discard it. And then I think the majority of that like a good chunk of that just goes to landfill, as in totally useless. So the fun thing about food waste is it could actually be the key to solving a lot of carbon capture. And that, like, the movie it does a really good job of telling story about the power of soil, right?
I highly suggest checking out the trailer for Kiss the Ground on YouTube. I just did, and wow. Okay, Matt, continue.
It's like, if you ask your average city slicker, do you compost? They'll look at you like, what's a compost? You ask the average farmer or rural liver, they might have, like most people in my neighborhood here in the interior of British Columbia, they have a backyard compost. But a lot of people don't even know that this is a thing. So what Pila is doing, we're going to be releasing kind of like the teaser for what we're about to launch on April 22nd. And on April 22nd, we're going to launch a device that will help people compost in their kitchen, right? And not only will it help people compost in their kitchen, but this little device, it's called Lomi. Lomi is the world's first, not the world's first kitchen composter. There's been a couple of those, but we've designed a machine that will not only compost your food waste, it will also eat bioplastics and compostable plastics, right? So like you could take your food scraps from dinner, throw it in Lomi, which looks like call it a small, really beautiful looking Apple design garbage can that sits on your counter. Scrape your food waste in there, throw in one of my phone cases or any product that is, we'll actually test a ton of them. So like think of like little coffee pods that are compostable. Throw that in Lomi with your food waste, start it at night like a dishwasher, and the next morning you will have dirt, right? And then we've got additives that we've created where you put it in with the stuff and it will come out usable dirt, which then you could throw in a garden and grow tomatoes or flowers. And it's important because if we can make it super easy for people, right, then they have incentive to use it. And the reason I like food waste is it's gross. And because it's gross, people want to solve it. Like even if you have a compost bin in your house, like those little green bins Like we have them in several cities in North America where you scrape your food waste in that. And then once a week they come and they pick up the green bin waste. Well, the problem with the green bins is they stink. They're disgusting. Nobody likes taking them out. Like the whole thing is just gross. Well, make it better, right? So like if you were throwing out dirt, you would be much more likely to participate in the system. And then can you make it so that like you actually build incentive around it?
According to plasticoceans.org, we are producing over 380 million tons of plastic every year. And some reports indicate that up to 50% of that is for single-use purposes, utilized for just a few moments, but on the planet for at least several hundred years. It is estimated that more than 10 million tons of plastic is dumped into our oceans every year.
I don't know a whole lot about the recycling or waste situation in America. Well, sure, I know some, but we tend to pay more attention to the problems of where we live, right? I think that's just human nature. So what can you tell me about Australia, Matt? What's going on in Brisbane from a plastic waste perspective?
So Brisbane pays, I don't know how big Brisbane is, but like I'll tell you, they pay a shitload of money every year to haul waste away from people's houses. Like a lot. It's a big industry. If a significant portion of that waste is food and food scraps, which is the heaviest of all the waste, it's heavy as hell. Like if you got a garbage bag that's mostly old food, you know how heavy that is, right? Imagine if instead you were taking the output of Lomi, which would be half the size and half the weight of what you would typically throw away, and that's what you sent away to get composted. Well, Brisbane's waste management bill just got cut in half, because they're hauling away half as much stuff. Not only that, but they're also hauling away like food that's been processed into the beginnings of compost. And compost is an important part of rebuilding soil. And if you rebuild soil, you actually just solve a significant chunk of carbon capture. So in essence, Lomi could actually be one of the biggest carbon capture inventions in the next however many years. And it's just going to sit in people's kitchens. You just distribute the load. Instead of saying like we need to build some big machine or big something that does it. It just comes down to dirt. So we've been working on it for a couple of years, and we're at the point now where we're like, okay, let's crowdfund this thing. Let's get it out there. And it's like it's designed, it works, it freaking works beautifully well. And it's because it can also eat bioplastics. Here's the extra level up insanity of the whole thing. The world is not moving to bioplastics. It's a big category of materials that would replace traditional plastics that can biodegrade or can compost in the right environment. The problem is the right environment, those right environments don't exist at large scale yet, right? So the infrastructure doesn't exist for like all of your toothpaste tubes and stuff to be made out of the same things that a peel case is. Well, if every house has a Lomi device, then the infrastructure absolutely exists. It means if your toothpaste tube is made out of a compostable polymer or elastomer or some kind of resin that was designed to gracefully end, and you put it in Lomi and you kind of got it broken down, then it could go away to a commercial composter, or you can break it down in Lomi fully or throw it in a compost. We're basically accelerating that process, which then means all these big CPG companies that are responsible for producing the most plastic in the world can adopt bioplastics because there actually is infrastructure. It just wasn't us asking cities and countries to build big commercial facilities. All I'm saying is put it in people's kitchens. Make another dishwasher that just happens to get rid of waste.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
What I believe is a true entrepreneur possesses 6 essential traits, and you're born with them and they can't be taught. And so what I do is I take you into this deep dive into your soul to confirm that you have these 6 essential traits and that you were born with them. 95% of you suck at money. You're just terrible with the numbers. And so it pains me having seen it so many times, but most artists, athletes, and creatives die broke. Okay. And it's heartbreaking because they made millions of dollars or could have made millions of dollars and they pissed it all away.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
I interviewed Matt Bertulli because Matt is the co-founder and CEO of Peeler Case, a very fast-growing mid-eight figures house of brands focused on creating a waste-free future. He is the co-founder and CEO of DMAC Media, one of the top global e-commerce agencies, managed services companies. He started out as a freelance developer about 6 years ago. I think it's a little bit more. And today, DMAC has over 90 employees and over 100 customers, which represent north of 6 billion in global retail sales. He is the author of Anything, Anywhere. Matt is an entrepreneur of the highest order, a fixer of one of the world's biggest problems, and my friend.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing, sound design, and voiceovers by Tiago Vega, Kelly Bonnyman, and Paula Vega. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, please go to psychologyofentrepreneurship.com.
Love the polished audio docuseries style of this podcast, The Psychology of Entrepreneurship? At We Are Podcast, you can learn how to create a similar style for your own show. This revolutionary virtual event assembles podcasters, entrepreneurs, and marketers in one spot, so you're able to learn from the masters. Head straight to wearepodcast.com to reserve your spot at our next event.